What did you believe an education was before you began home educating? Because most of us inherited a definition that we did not choose, and we have been measuring ourselves against that thing ever since. Welcome to the Confident Homeschool Mom podcast. I'm Teresa Wiedrich, certified life coach for homeschool moms. This is the podcast for the mom who looks capable on the outside, but feels scattered and unsure on the inside. I spend my days being the support, the clarifier, and the cheerleader for the woman behind the homeschool family. My work focuses inward. Most homeschool overwhelm has nothing to do with curriculum. It has everything to do with the pressure, the perfectionistic tendencies, and the old stories we carry inside. Every episode, I want to help you make one small shift, not a perfect plan, just 1% shift. A 1 degree from pressure to presence, because that is all it takes to begin moving your homeschool family life towards something more peaceful, more connected, and more you. I believe you are the most important curriculum in your homeschool, and you deserve a seat at your homeschool table too. Let's get into today's episode. Maybe you're listening to this in the minivan on the way to ballet. Or maybe you've got a 5-minute window while the laundry is going before you head back to math. Or maybe, and I see you, you're sitting in your car in the garage, the kids just went inside after co-op, and you press play before you have to go back in and direct traffic. It's the beginning of June. Co-op is wrapped. The calendar is filling up with fun activities. There's that trip to the lighthouse, and the summer weather is here, and on the West Coast, we know that the window doesn't last long before the fog and the rain begin. But there's still that feeling that you didn't finish what you set out to do this year, that you didn't complete the things you originally intended back in August or September. And I'm guessing you're toggling back and forth between two very different versions of what you think homeschooling should look like at this time of year. Is that true? One sounds like there's so much more to finish. We are not done. I need to make sure that we finished all the things we planned at the beginning of the year. I need to make sure that I can assuage this feeling of behindness. I'm behind something. I need to make sure we're doing enough by the end of the year. And you look at your sister-in-law's homeschool, and it looks the way you imagined that yours should have been all year. But she doesn't have your kids. The other version might sound like this. I just want to let my child learn in the way that they learn, in the way that they approach things. I want it to feel different than this. I want it to be personalized, customized, child-led. I'm going to introduce you to Lila. I was talking with a mom. I'm going to call her Lila. Her name isn't actually Lila. She's been homeschooling for 6 years. She has 3 kids. And she said something I want you to hear. She said, I'm worried that my kids will hone in on a topic and only do that for a few years. They're not going to learn what they need to learn to survive in the world. They won't be able to relate to others or learn the skills they need for their adult lives if I don't give them all the things that everybody else seems to be doing. Maybe my daughter will grow up and blame me for not completing certain courses that would have provided qualifications for the career path she might want. She might blame me. I know that these are Lila's words and they aren't yours, but I'm guessing you might relate to the energy of what she's saying. Here's what I want you to know about Lila. She doesn't realize that she is actually clearer than she thinks. She already understands the point of education. But there are things that are fogging her view and getting in her way. Partly it's her fears. Partly it's her perception of what an education is supposed to be. And partly other people's fears that she's been carrying as if they were hers. And that is what this episode is all about. There is a question that I ask every single woman that I work with in coaching. And if you know me, if you've met me in the collective, if you've heard me on the podcast a few times, you've heard me say this question over and over and over. What do you believe an education is? Because here's why that question matters so much. Your belief around what an education is, that is actually your goal. You are moving toward that intention, whether you realize it or not. You can look at the extracurriculars you choose, or the workbooks, or even the subjects you choose, the time that you invest every day, the read-alouds, the conversations in the car, the real-life tasks around the house, the moments you're teaching your kids to do all these things alongside you. You can look at every single one of those things and ask yourself, do these things actually serve what I believe a home education is? Because if what you're doing does not align with what you believe, you are setting yourself up for a whole lot of frustration. Your aspirations and your expectations will always be misaligned with what you're actually doing. And the second question I ask is, what did you believe an education was before you began home educating? Because most of us inherited a definition that we did not choose, and we have been measuring ourselves against that thing ever since. You came into homeschooling for a reason, and likely one of the reasons was that it could be customized or individualized, intended for the child in front of you, right? But then you sat down at your kitchen table or your homeschool room table, and you defaulted to the curriculum, the boxes of books, the workbooks, the math program, the online program that seemed aligned with the kind of education that you grew up in. You defaulted to doing things that everyone else was doing. You didn't stop to ask yourself, does this actually serve my intention behind the education for my kids? My goal by the end of this conversation is to help you get a whole lot clearer on what an education really is, and to help you assess whether what you're doing applies to your family, to the child right in front of you, or should I say the teenager right in front of you, because this applies as much, possibly more, to a teenager than it does even to a younger child. Because who is going to be asked, what are you going to do for the rest of your life within the next 3 to 4 years? Your high schooler. And this is not lost on me today, because within hours of writing this, recording this, my youngest son will be registering for the classes he's chosen for his engineering program. I don't know what he's going to do for the rest of his life, but I know what his next step is. And I know what the point of his home education was. So how do you want to raise them up? What is the goal of the home education in your home? For your teen, your tween, your teenager? Let's talk about it. I want to talk about what it actually feels like to be running on that inherited definition of education. Not what your day looks like from the outside, but what it feels like from the inside. I hear moms say that it feels overwhelming or heavy in their chest. They're always behind, always responsible for everything, always anticipating the next thing, and never able to do all the things at once. You feel like you have to do everything yourself. You collapse into bed at the end of the day and you doom scroll because you have no energy left for anything else, nothing meaningful. And sometimes it feels like chaos. You second guess your homeschool decisions. You compare yourself to your mother-in-law or to the woman in the Facebook group, to whoever is making it look the way you imagined homeschool should look like. You're carrying your own emotional load and your husband's too. And sometimes, and this is the one that brings the most guilt, sometimes when your kids come to you and ask for you, you don't want to be there. And then you feel terrible about not wanting to be there. That is what it costs to carry a definition of education that was never really yours to begin with. Here's the thing about trying to not have any gaps, or trying to complete everything by the end of the year, or making sure that what you're doing is enough. It is not realistic. It is not even possible. And it's not happening in school either. Teachers leave many pages of their intended curriculum undone by the end of the year. There are interruptions. They get sick. A substitute comes in. Maybe he's ineffective. Maybe he's not. But there are so many stops and starts to a school experience that there is no complete, no gap-free, fully covered education happening in a classroom either. I can tell you from my own experience and from watching the kids I've known who went through conventional high school, even the very academic ones were force-fed information and expected to retrieve it, regurgitate it, and test it. Sometimes a test a week. And for what purpose? Every single time you're having a real conversation with your child about a topic they love or that you love, or you simply have an interest in sharing with them, they are more likely to absorb that. because it's cloaked in connection and relationship and interest and fewer distractions. It is not possible to create a perfectly covered, 100% complete, no gaps education inside a school. And neither is it possible for you. And the sooner you stop measuring yourself against that standard, the sooner you can actually start building something that works. So if we know the standard is impossible, why do we keep holding ourselves to it? There are actually many reasons as I see it. But here's what I see most often. Mom is trying to prove that this home education is worthy and valuable. She's trying to make sure that the people who are worried, her mom, her in-laws, her neighbor, they don't need to be worried. She is trying to prove it to herself that maybe she doesn't need to be worried either, that it really is effective, that it really does lead somewhere purposeful. She might be afraid of other people's opinions, and she might be afraid of her own failure, most of all. And just like Lila, she's sometimes lying awake at night, afraid that her homeschool teen or her soon-to-be grown kiddo will one day feel incapable of taking their next step in life because she didn't do what needed to be done at the right time and create a no-gap education. Here's what I want you to hear. I actually think you already know this intuitively. There is no human being on this planet who knows everything, and no one's life is purposeful because they have every knowledge bit known to humankind. People live purposeful lives because they're bringing something to the world that matters to them, that benefits others, that gives them energy and fuel, that enables them to create an income, put food on the table, maybe take a trip to the local campground, whatever matters to them. A purposeful life is not built on the back of a perfectly delivered conventional education. And frankly, it is not built on the back of you making sure they know everything known to your iPhone, your Android, or AI. Lila said, for the last 5 years, I feel like I've been so academics focused, overloading our timetable, feeling like I'm not doing enough. Essentially, I've been box ticking, trying to push through material. But I know that doesn't necessarily translate to deep, meaningful learning. This is exactly the kind of thing that Aligned Homeschool Reset session helps you surface, where your default definition of education is actually coming from, and whether it's actually yours. You can find the link to your free Aligned Homeschool Reset session in the show notes. When a homeschool mom tells me she wants something different, she wants a happier homeschool, a more intentional homeschool, I want to tell you what she actually means. She wants to stop feeling chaotic. She's tired of feeling like a chicken with its head cut off. No matter how much she does, it's never enough. Every time her kids push back, every time there's resistance, her first thought is, what am I doing wrong? How am I getting this wrong again? But underneath all of that, underneath the chaos and comparison and the never enough feeling, what she really wants is, drumroll please, peace. She's not looking for a perfect homeschool or the perfect curriculum. It's not a thing. She wants peace. I want you to close your eyes for a second. Picture an ordinary Tuesday, not a perfect day. It's a peaceful Tuesday. It starts with a slow morning, let's say coffee. A little quiet before anything begins. Before the kids start talking, you started thinking your own thoughts. 2 thoughts in a row, maybe even 2 thoughts in a row. Then maybe you're baking with the kids or making breakfast together, something cozy, something together. Maybe you're going to do a read aloud when nobody's watching a clock. You're doing art alongside your kids. Maybe the day actually felt like something you wanted to live. Not just a day where you checked off every box. The vision of that Tuesday isn't about your schedule. It's not about your curriculum. It's actually a picture of who you want to be. You want to be a present mom, a creative mom, an unhurried mom, living from your to-live list, not your to-do list. You want to actually be in your life rather than managing it from a distance. You don't want fun memories with your kids instead of learning. You want fun memories with your kids as the learning. That's a different thing. Here's what happens the moment that you let yourself want that. I've seen this with moms. The fear shows up. It comes in the words of, what if I'm wrong? What if I'm making this too easy for my kid or for myself? What if it's not enough? Can I hear an amen? Are those the questions? If they're not, and you've got other fears, I'd love to hear them in the comments below. And underneath those fears is something even more specific. Because choosing that Tuesday, the slow morning, the cooking together, maybe the read alouds, that means she lets go of some things. She has to get clear on what actually matters to her. She has to let go of what her husband thinks about what she's going to do in a day and how much she can do in a day. She has to let go of what other people think. She has to practice keeping her eyes within the four walls of her home instead of keeping them on her Instagram feed. That is not a small thing to ask of a woman who has been measuring herself against the outside world forever. But here's what I see happen when a mom finally does let go of that external measuring stick, even just a little bit. She gets clear. That's what happens first. And then the peace follows. When she practices it, when she actually lives inside her own definition instead of someone else's, she comes to understand two things. First, it actually worked for her kids. And second, it actually works for her. The kids are learning so much and they're loving their lives. And so is she. That is not something you can see from the outside. It's something you have to live your way into. You know what Lila said? She said, I want our homeschooling days to be different. I want to create a happier homeschool where intentional, meaningful learning is happening, along with plenty of time for the kids to pursue their interests, develop life skills, and generally grow as individuals. That is what her goal is. That's what she has on her to live list. I want to talk about what actually shifts when a mom begins to loosen the grip of that external measuring stick. Because it doesn't happen all at once. It happens in layers. And I want you to be able to recognize yourself in this wherever you are in the process. There are 5 things I see shift, and none of them are about curriculum. Shift 1 is that she stops seeing the imaginary classroom and starts seeing the child right in front of her. Girlfriend, when you start seeing the child right in front of you and not the imaginary classroom that you believe should be homeschooling, that is when your peace comes. That is when the chaos declines. And that is when the satisfaction in your home builds. That is when you start looking at opportunities for learning as opportunities to have fun and create a meaningful life alongside your child. Imaginary classroom, that is what most of us are actually managing. We're not managing our kids. It's a version of school that exists only in our heads, and it's running our entire day. Shift 2 is that she stops managing her child's resistance and starts recognizing who her child actually is. When a mom stops experiencing her child as resistance, like that pushback or defiance, or that kid just won't do the thing, she starts actually seeing her child. And when she starts noticing her child, really seeing her kiddo, here's what she notices, that kiddo is freaking smart. She is so capable, so fully engaged, just not always in the way that her mom expected. She has a mind of her own. And that is a beautiful thing. I know it's hard to parent sometimes, but it is a beautiful thing because it means she's going to live a purposeful life. She doesn't need permission from everyone outside of her to know who she is or what she cares about or what she wants. She definitely knows, and she's going to figure it out, right? The moment a mom stops measuring her child against an external standard is the moment she actually starts seeing her child. Her daughter, her son, the person who has been right there the entire time. Shift 3 is that she likes her kids more. I'm just going to say it plainly. She likes her kids more. She has more time because she's no longer spending all of it managing everyone. She likes being in their space. She doesn't feel controlled by the imperfection or the inconsistencies or the things she used to think were not ideal. The home gets calmer. She notices it in the atmosphere because she can even explain it. Her body feels it before her mind catches up. She likes her kids more, and they can feel it. She stops lying awake, worrying about what she did or didn't do, and starts lying awake about entirely different things. Mostly because she's possibly perimenopausal, but I digress. Early in the process of coaching and untangling all the things, she lies awake worrying that she's not doing this right, that she's creating some impossible obstacle for her child to overcome, whether that's returning to school or maybe her teen finding her way into college, or her grown child accomplishing the things they wanted to accomplish when they are grown. And maybe that her child will resent her for her choices. But later, when something has shifted in coaching, only all the things that perimenopause invites in the middle of the night are the reasons that she'll lie awake in the middle of the night anymore. By the way, I've noticed that the women that come to coach with me are typically hovering around their 40th birthday. Sometimes it's moms that are younger, and sometimes it's certainly moms that are older. But around the 35 to 45 years, that's typically when I'm seeing moms. So the discussion of perimenopause, I say lightly, but not really. That might be the reason you're lying awake at night. So what's shift 5? It's that she stops reaching for external validation and starts asking why. This is probably the most significant shift. She stops needing external validation. She stops asking what everyone else thinks. She stops searching for one more thing she could add to her schedule. And she starts asking why she's doing all the things she's doing in the first place. That question, why am I doing this, is the ultimate question. Because when she can answer that question from the inside, instead of asking what other people think, she has found her own internal compass, and she doesn't need to borrow anyone else's to live her purposeful life. She stops asking, is this good enough? And she starts asking, who are you becoming? That is not a small shift. You know how I know Lila moved into shift 5? It's because she said, even if no one was watching or assessing my approach, I would maintain similar objectives and methods. If you happen to be a brand new homeschool mom and you're listening to this thinking, I don't even know where shift 1 is yet, you're always welcome to grab the 7-day Confident Homeschool Roadmap. It will give you a clear, grounded foundation to build from. You'll find it somewhere in the show notes below. So I want to come back to Lila for a moment. You met her at the beginning of this episode when she was talking about her fears, the worry that her kids weren't learning enough, that they wouldn't survive in the world, that her daughter might one day blame her. Those were her exact words. And maybe they are yours too. Here's who Lila is now. She's quieter inside. She's more contemplative, more observant, more connected to her kids. And as she began to explore the real intention behind her home education, what she was actually trying to raise up in her kids, she discovered something that she didn't expect. What she was doing for her kids was what she was doing for herself. The two things were never separate. Lila started finding time for herself too, because she realized that she wasn't just doing a to-do list. She was living a to-live list. And she was getting clear in what mattered for her kids' education and their purposeful lives. And then she realized she could do that for herself too. So you've been listening to this episode. I'd love to hear what it's brought up for you. Is it that you've been working too hard, pushing too hard, white-knuckling for too long? Is it that you're doing some things that don't really matter? Is it that you're not really listening to your child? That you're trying to put on them a home education that is, curiously, a parallel to exactly what the conventional education system is trying to do to our kids? What's your insight? What really matters? Can you give yourself permission to just do the thing that matters and let go of the rest? I want you to feel at ease when you pull out those earbuds today. They're doing so much more than you understand. But there are also so many things you are doing that are completely unnecessary. And you are whipping yourself into submission very unhappily, yo-yoing from, am I doing this right, to I have to do more. That space is a very unhappy space to live in. It's not helping your kids either. You can feel at peace. You can feel more at ease. That is not how you get to feel because you finished off a perfect homeschool year, which doesn't exist. It is available to you right now in the middle of the unfinished, the imperfect, the June that didn't quite go the way you planned it, life that you're living. If you want to deepen this work, I have 3 ways you can do that. First, take the assessment. It'll help you get clear on the root of your frustrations in your homeschool and life as a homeschool mom. Link is in the show notes. Second, if you are a first-year homeschooler, grab the 7-day Confident Homeschool Roadmap. That will set you up to feel exactly what it says, confident, also found in the show notes below. And third, if you haven't already booked your free Aligned Homeschool Reset session, why not? This is your opportunity to get clear on what's really going on in your life and to walk away a whole lot more peaceful than you arrived. Thanks for joining me today. Did we walk the dog? Do the laundry? Before you go, I want to leave you with this. You don't need to overhaul everything after listening to this episode. You don't need a new plan. You don't need a new curriculum or a completely different life, and you don't need to trade the kids in for someone else's. You just need a 1% shift from pressure to presence. That's all. That 1 degree ripples outward into your kids, into your home, your community, and your own sense of self in ways you can't yet fully see. You matter in your homeschool life. Not just as the teacher, the planner, the one who holds it all together, but as a whole person with needs and desires and a life worth nurturing. You deserve a seat at that homeschool table too. I'd love to hear how this episode landed for you, so just shoot me a message on socials, or better yet, leave a review wherever you listen. It takes 2 minutes, and it helps another homeschool mom who needs this to find her way here. And if you know a homeschool mom who's carrying too much right now, would you share this episode with her too? Hit subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next, and I'll see you next week.